I'm Dale Smith for Looney Politics, and with Parliament coming back this week, there's an important thing to remember around supply days. Now, supply days are the official name for what are otherwise known as opposition days, and they're known as supply days because they are tied to the supply cycle, meaning the estimates in the financial cycle of Parliament. But also because the original purpose of these days was for opposition parties to demonstrate why the government didn't deserve supply, meaning the expenditures that they were trying to make on behalf of government business. Now, in recent years, it's more become just a matter of any subject under the sun that the opposition wants to talk about, and oftentimes it is about how terrible the government is, or sometimes it's about these mom and apple pie motions that they try and get everyone on board with, which actually kind of defeats the purpose for why these days exist. But nevertheless, this is one of the tactics that opposition parties will use on occasion. They're more important now because with the NDP now out of the Supply and Confidence Agreement, that means that the opposition parties, most notably the Conservatives, will be using these to move motions of non-confidence as soon as they possibly can, because they are trying to trigger an election at their earliest convenience. Now, there are a set number of supply days as part of the supply cycle. Every year there's so many that are allotted to each different opposition party, and the government, however, does get to set when those days are on the calendar. Now, this has sometimes proven controversial. In the Paul Martin era, there was a move at one point to put all of the supply days at the end of the cycle, and the opposition parties were not very happy about that at all, but it was a way of trying to get government business through before the opposition parties could try to bring the government down, which they did eventually do. Now, we will have to see in the next few weeks how this is going to play out, because the Conservatives have promised to move a non-confidence motion as soon as they can, and trying to embarrass the NDP into joining them as part of that. Now, the Bloc, however, are also players in this, and they have signaled that they are willing to negotiate with the government for support for things that they are looking for. So this doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have an election as soon as we possibly can. It looks like the Bloc could be another willing partner for the government in order to keep things going till at least next year. But we'll have to see. Accidents do happen, and it's going to be a little harder now for parties to have these votes and have enough strategic absences that the government will still win and save themselves for the day because they don't actually want to go to an election. But that's harder to do now that electronic voting is the standard in the House of Commons, and it's harder for them to justify not voting for those absences, which makes it even harder for the government to survive the day when no one actually really wants an election other than the Conservatives. So keep an eye out for these days when they are allotted, and stay tuned for how these votes will turn out. For Looney Politics, I'm Dale Smith.